Quds Day arrives yet again, as it has for the past 40 years, but with a different appearance. As the novel coronavirus continues to tear through the world, the international annual Quds Day rally moves online. Renowned figures will address the plight of Palestine through cyberspace on the 22nd of May. That's the last Friday of the Muslim fasting month of Ramadan. Some nations will rally in their cars to address social distancing as well as the Palestinian crisis. Iran will be streaming its leader's live message from all channels. If you can't come out, why rally or campaign at all? The question answers why the plight of Palestine is so important. It can't be forgotten even for a single year. In fact, it's not a matter of concern just to Palestinians, but to the whole Middle East or West Asia at large. And according to our interviewees of today, it's a matter of importance for the whole world. Iran, for one, has made the matter of Palestine its own business, unlike most all countries. For more, stay with me, Leila Faromarzi, on Iran Today. Iran tends to have produced statesmen alert to the importance of sacrificing momentary gain for the greater good of the Middle East or West Asia. And with the success of Iran's Islamic Revolution in 1979, Quds Day was introduced in the same spirit of revolting for the oppressed to overthrow the oppressors. It was introduced by the founder of the revolution, Imam Khomeini. Mr. Kanani Muqaddam is one of the pioneers of the revolution. He details different aspects of the formation of Quds Day. It wasn't with the advent of Quds Day that Iran started talking of the importance of the plight of Palestine. I mean, Iranian voices were raised long before. So what makes Quds Day so important?
The late Imam brought up a doctrine based on Quds Day. This doctrine comprises several questions. First and foremost, why is it International Quds Day? We can see that the Palestine issue has grown into an international one, while it used to be an Arab-Israeli issue. Why has the holy month of Ramadan been chosen? The Imam intended to say that the ideology capable of liberating the Palestinian nation and occupied territories and eliminate Israel is an Islamic attitude. Regarding the question why Ramadan was chosen and why its last Friday was chosen, we should first know what happens on Fridays. We expect the Imam Mahdi to make a second coming on a Friday, so one question pertains to the Savior of the world. The second point is the collective Friday prayers. That shows that people should go ahead and Muslims should practice solidarity and unity to hinder the development of the Zionist regime.
It was in the earliest days of the Israeli occupation of Palestine some 70 years ago that warnings rose in powerful tones from this country to suffocate the illegitimate child Israel in its cradle. But Arab leaders stalled, and a Zionist regime got the chance to establish itself in 1948. Then it all became too late, too soon. But Palestinians and their friendly neighbors wouldn't give up. And Quds Day is the political embodiment of their re-strategizing some 40 years ago. There's also a military aspect to the strategy. To Iran, the Palestinian cause is a matter of principle for all time, which is reason enough for moral and practical support from this country. But why so? What's so important for Iran to have created the Quds Force and helped keep the resistance movement alive? How has Iran helped keep the resistance front alive? Mr. Dasmalchian comments. He was ambassador to Arab lands. The resistance movement, how important have Iranian measures been in keeping it alive?
The founder of Islamic resistance movement in Palestine is the Islamic Republic of Iran. Before that, nationalist groups like the Palestine Liberation Organization were struggling, but they had never any Islamic or jihadic orientation. The concept of jihad in the Palestine issue was pioneered by the late founder of the Islamic Republic of Iran, the late Imam Khomeini. Therefore, if we want to talk about resistance, its administrator in the present time is the Islamic Republic of Iran.
Iran created the Quds force as a practical solution to the Palestinian crisis. And along those lines, General Soleimani was assassinated. Would you say that's a sign of America's fear of the Iranian effort?
The first decision they made was to assassinate General Soleimani as the mastermind of the Quds force, at least over the past 2 decades. His absence is a big loss for the Muslim world and our own country. However, as I said, the Quds force was established based on a discourse and has its own structure. The discourse and orientation of the Quds force will never change by just the coming and going of people. The United States and the Zionist regime were both alarmed at the advance of the Quds force as far as away as the Palestinian borders, forcing them to opt for this illegal, immoral and anti-human rights act and assassinate one Iranian official who had been invited to another nation.
Iran is irked by fellow Muslims being driven from their homes by a Western-backed tribe claiming to be of this area. They're irked by people of the region being treated as outsiders when Al-Quds or Jerusalem is the Muslims' first temple. Not to forget, Jerusalem is housed in a predominantly Arab Muslim region. Iran is also irked by the human rights abuses, which indicate Palestinians are in the front line of fire. So let's hear of the plight and fight of Palestinians themselves from a spokesman of theirs in Tehran, Mr. Qudumi.
We are today commemorating the anniversary of Nakba, the catastrophe. You are talking about 150,000 refugees which has been taken from their home at that time in 1948. You are talking about destruction of 531 villages. You are talking about 70 massacres. Very few of those who has escaped some massacres like Hajja Zainab. Hajja Zainab, she has a very famous video about her suffering when that time she was only 7, 8 years old. And she is telling us how the Israelis, they were putting her brothers and cousins inside the funnel. Just imagine that in front of her, and she had to hide in some corner at home, and then they are talking about Holocaust to us. They want to have a lecture for us about Holocaust. They, the people who has committed Holocaust inside Palestine against Palestinians.
The Holocaust was used as an excuse to settle Ashkenazi Jews in a Middle Eastern heartland, Palestine, which did indeed have Jews as well as Muslims, but Jews of a different kind, indigenous Semitic Jews. This would grant Western powers a stronghold in this oil-rich, geopolitically strategic region.
The US's path towards unilateralism is littered with some obstacles, as note American strategists. For them, Iran and the Middle East pose a big obstacle. You must know why. It is because of Iran's geopolitical and geostrategic position in West Asia. This region is in fact a key in US hands. Anyone holding this key will be able to decide for the world, or at least get the upper hand in the US's strategic rivalry with China and Russia.
A two-nation state might once have seemed a viable option to some. But every chance at peace has been burnt up by Israel itself, Mr. Kanani stresses.
Israel was focused on the area extending from the Nile to the Euphrates. It was no question of two states. These were just pretexts highlighted during the Oslo Accords and Camp David agreements in order to win concessions from Palestine to stabilize their own position. The Zionist lobby in the US has been supporting the usurper regime of Israel, and therefore it would give them no concessions to Palestinians. Even when the two-state solution was raised, the Israelis claimed that a future Palestine should have no regular army, maritime border and airspace.
Mr. Ruivaran explains how it's just a cruel rumor that Palestinians themselves sold off their lands rather than being thrown off them.
An Israeli professor wrote a book named The Ethnic Cleansing of Palestine. He related in the book that when his family migrated to Palestine, there was a Delta Plan which was implemented in 1968, a plan to evacuate 516 villages and move 800,000 persons to Lebanon, Syria, and Jordan. It's horrendous. Actually, it's unacceptable to save the Jewish community by sacrificing the Palestinian community.
Had Palestinians been so keen on selling out, they might accept the Trump administration's latest deal of the century, which has been nicknamed the deception of the century. But they didn't accept it, did they? Then again, in the long term, the whole scenario may turn on Israel itself. Under the deal, Israel would be officially granted an undivided Jerusalem as its capital. It would also annex the Jordan Valley and Israeli settlements, which are widely considered illegal under international law. Palestine would then turn into nothing more than areas of Jerusalem to the east of the wall. To add insult to injury, the deal also offered Palestinians $50 billion worth of investment in the future state and access to 2 ports.
The whole land has been confiscated. I'm talking about 78% of the land which has been occupied by Israelis in 1948 by force. The remaining 22%, you have only 1% or 2% for Jerusalem, and the remaining is West Bank and Gaza Strip. They want also in this deal of century to engulf 60% of West Bank, which is not more than 18% of the historical Palestine. 60% of 18%, and what is remaining to the Palestinian? 2 areas in West Bank by name of A and B, that A, the Palestinians are allowed to administer the people over there, and B is sharing between the Israelis and the Palestinians themselves. And Jerusalem has nothing to do with the Palestinian. Unfortunately, for Israel and today for the existing American administration, that it is the eternal and united capital of Israel.
Time for a short break. We'll be back in no time. By declaring what is still Palestinian land as Israeli land, the deal of the century may inadvertently cause a boom in the Palestinian population of Israel, a demographic bomb as it's called.
The reverse immigration because of the Israeli atrocities against their own nation even, so-called nation inside occupied Palestine, is also a phenomenon has to be discussed by the elders of Israel. So this is the demographic bomb we are talking about. By itself, it has its own positive consequences in the favor of Palestinian. But this has nothing to do with the deal of century in its main crux to emphasize the political creed and political creed of America to ensure the supremacy of Israel in quality-wise over the quantity supremacy of the Arab in the region.
Israel is pulling at straws to continue its policy of annexation. In fact, 70-year-old Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu is, in spite of his ongoing corruption investigations, including scheming to influence legislation to benefit media moguls, pulling strings with the judicial system. He has been doing so to maintain his grip on power. He'll be ruling for the next 18 months with former military chief Benny Gantz under a power-sharing deal. Let's take a quick break to see how the world media is covering the occasion. For that, I give you Shahrzad.
Hi, my name is Shahrzad Manucheri, and this is the news section of Iran Today. We'll be looking online for the latest update on International Quds Day, Iran, and the issue of Palestine. Mer News reports how Iran names Palestine most significant issue in the Muslim world. Iran's foreign ministry has released a statement on the occasion of the Nakba Day, which marks the anniversary of the establishment of the illegitimate Zionist regime of Israel, naming Palestine the most important issue in the Muslim world. The Palestinian land witnessed one of the most tragic incidents in the history of Islam and on the world on May 14, 1948. Ever since then, the people of this territory have not savored the taste of tranquility and calm. 72 years ago this day, Zionist immigrants, relying on racist and deviant ideas and thoughts, murdered the native people of Palestine, including innocent men and women, young and old, as well as children, or forced them to quit their land and houses. Zionists start ruling Palestinian land, the incident with terrible consequences for West Asia, the statement said. The Middle East Monitor states Iran Shura Council Parliament approves urgent anti-Israel bill. The Iranian parliament on May 12th approved an urgent bill aimed at confronting Israeli practices and preserving Palestinian rights. According to the agency, the council unanimously voted in favor of the bill, which includes 14 articles. The bill affirms that the historical and integrated land of Palestine belongs to the original Palestinian peoples, including Muslims, Christians, and Jews, and obliges Iran to treat Jerusalem as the eternal capital of Palestine. According to the bill, the foreign ministry should make arrangements within 6 months of passing the bill to establish a consulate or virtual embassy of the Islamic Republic of Iran in the capital of Jerusalem in Palestine. Tasnim News claims OIC urges support for Palestinians' right of return. The Organization of Islamic Cooperation, OIC, on May 15th called on the international community to support the right of Palestinian refugees to return to their lands from which they were expelled in 1948. The OIC stressed the Palestinian cause is a core issue, reiterating its firm and absolute support for the Palestinian people in their just struggle to regain and exercise their inalienable national rights. It called on the international community to continue to provide full support to the Palestinian people in order to regain their rights, including their right of return. Citing international legitimacy resolutions, the organization affirmed the necessity of a two-state solution and the establishment of a Palestine state with East Jerusalem as its capital. That's all for this segment. We'll see you next week.
Not to undermine the persuasion of power, but Iran's proposed solution is at least theoretically acceptable. That is to hold a national referendum in Palestine for all original Palestinian people, including Muslims, Christians, and Jews and their descendants, to partake in. Should they vote in favor, the referendum would, unlike the Trump-Kushner deal of the century, recognize Palestinians' right to self-determination, their right of return, and of determining a political system that can decide on all matters, including the status of non-indigenous residents of Palestine. What do you think of the referendum Iran proposed, the referendum for all original Palestinians to partake in?
In an untainted referendum without foreign interference, people would choose the type of government and determine their own political future. That would involve Muslims, Jews, and Christians. There are many Christians there because Jesus was born in Bethlehem. Moreover, Palestinians who have been forced out of their homeland would also take part in this referendum. Based on the UN Charter and democracy obligations on everyone's right to self-determination, the political system will be determined and an independent government born out of the votes cast by residents of the Palestinian land would be chosen. The Islamic Republic of Iran has long been repeating this logical demand. But as the global hegemony dominated by international Zionism does not let such a plan be discussed at the national and international levels.
There has been an awakening to the truth of Palestine and Israel on the international front. But the US still has a firm grip on the reins of the world since the dissolution of the Soviet Union and the end of the Cold War. As the world's unmatched power for the time being, it freely uses its vetoing privilege to veto any UN resolutions passed in favor of Palestine.
So far as the Americans have been willing to be master of the world, the UN was trying to play a role. But ever since the US opted for America First policy, you can see that the contrast has emerged between the US and international bodies. Under such circumstances, international bodies would not be able to fulfill the role they want. Such bodies have been financed by the US for 70 years. Even when they were solid-based, they did not dare to contradict US policies. Now that their interests are in conflict with the US's policy, they would not naturally play any effective role.
And the United Nations Security Council, which is made up of Western powers plus China and Russia, has since 1989 been passing resolution after resolution to uphold Palestinian rights. And since, the US has dissented against those resolutions. General Assembly Resolution 3379 of 1975 actually determined that Zionism is a form of racism and racial discrimination. But with US opposition and bullying, the General Assembly adopted Resolution 4686 in 1991, hence negating its own Resolution 3379. All theft of land and abuse of human rights to one side and everything that happens in this very year to another. The COVID-19 pandemic is being wielded as yet another weapon of war against Palestine, especially Gaza, which is one of the most densely populated areas in the world.
The problem which we are suffering is the situation of the siege. So you cannot even get the kits, proper kits for the checking of the people. You cannot get your own proper living in order to carry on with your own routine life. Say, for example, today we have incurred $3.8 billion loss in the Palestinian economy, which is very tremendous for a country under occupation. At the time that the Israelis are besieging Gaza, they are besieging the cities inside the West Bank.
The situation is yet more precarious for those in detention, and there are many. Zionist militants detain Palestinians, including women and children, on a daily basis without charge. It is part and parcel of an unjustified wartime routine. Hundreds of Palestinians are held in administrative detention and imprisoned indefinitely without an inkling of what the supposed evidence against them is. More than 600 residents of occupied Jerusalem, Al-Quds, have been detained since the beginning of this year. Also, Israel holds over 5,000 Palestinians as political prisoners. We are talking a decades-long wartime routine, including war crimes, when no war has been licensed by the international community. In fact, the international community has even condemned the expansion of Israeli Jewish settlements time and again. But Israeli warplanes continue to bombard the Gaza Strip and various parts of Palestine on a daily basis, without any accountability for killing ordinary people. And so a UN not designed for the unipolar world of today has inked resolution after resolution for Palestinian rights, but in vain, as said before.
You can see that the only option available now to humanity is to restructure such organizations. The Islamic Republic of Iran has made it clear, and some other countries are repeating the same. The UN with its current structure can no longer guarantee stable peace and security in the world. You see that even the creators of the UN are in conflict with one another. A future UN should grant roles to all nations.
For more examples, as of 2013, Israel had been condemned in 45 resolutions by the United Nations Human Rights Council. That's almost half of all country-specific resolutions passed by that council. And from 1967 to 1989, the UN Security Council adopted 131 resolutions directly addressing the Arab-Israeli conflict. What could protect Palestine from further damage would be an Arab shield. Arab states must come up with a clear position on the US peace scheme or deception deal, whichever way you may look at it. That is to say, Arabs will need to unite in rejecting it and take practical steps in supporting Palestine. But then the US has bought friendship among southern Persian Gulf states, and that makes things no easier. Saudi Arabia has practically been handed out a blank check by the Trump administration.
The leader has said time and again that we would be supporting anyone willing to fight against the Zionist regime. Therefore, Hamas and Islamic Jihad movement, the two leading pro-Palestinian groups, are enjoying full support from the Islamic Republic of Iran, and Iran has so far helped them as much as they wanted.
Muslim hearts are with Palestinians, as the world at large is awakening to the unjustness of their outrageous plight. That's it for today. Thanks for watching from the whole team. Do watch again at the same times next week and each week after, and don't forget to leave your comments and topic requests. Bye for now.